Time. It is the one resource which can never be gotten again. It is the one thing which cannot be taken back, at least in the real world. However, in the game Braid by Jonathan Blow, the player has the ability to move backwards in time after making a mistake. This can now save them their precious minutes, because instead of taking the time to get back to the point they were at previously, the player can just reverse time to get back to their starting point. At least, that is what you are led to believe at first. As the player progresses, some of the puzzles actually must use this time rewinding mechanic in order to solve them. It then becomes not a tool to save time, because a mistake cannot be fixed by simply rewinding time. And still, this mechanic does not save the time of needing to actually find a solution to the puzzle in the first place, as well as some of the more tedious solutions. So, why go through all this trouble in the first place? Mechanically, at first, the only interaction time has on any object is when the player can rewind and fast forward time. All of the objects, including yourself, move with the manipulation in time, thus no real impact is made. But, as the player progresses, they gain more and more features to use with their time powers. Some objects are no longer affected by time, and in one world, a clone which copies your previous moves is created after rewinding time. These interactions serve not only to exemplify that the rewind feature is not meant to save your time, but also makes claims on how you can interact with time. But why? Why these mechanics? What do they say? Perhaps we can find the answer to how to look at these mechanics through the narrative. What influence do these mechanics have on the narrative? What sort of tool is time, if it is not meant to save the player's time? The hint lies in the final chapter. At first, the player is led to believe that he is saving the princess that he has tried so hard to find this entire game. However, once reaching a dead end, the only thing the player can do is rewind time. Thus it is revealed how the princess was actually trying to run away from the player. All this time, the player thinks that they are in the present and that their perspective is right. Yet their view in this past was wrong, and it ends up with this new perspective that they have made a mistake. Was the player supposed to know this ending? Perhaps there were hints, such as in these descriptions of the mistakes the main character has made in the past. But a difference in perspective helps a long way in understanding the full situation. This lesson about a difference in perspective is then meant to be applied to this game, due to the author revealing that this game can also be a metaphor for the atomic bomb creation. For example, in World 2, the player can make as many mistakes as they want, and their solution is to simply rewind time. This leads to sloppier movements because to fix their mistakes, it's easy. Even in the narrative, the main character says that he made many mistakes, and just wishes that we could remove the damage but be wiser from our experiences. Yet, there is a contradiction to this statement. Mechanically, the player does not learn a hard lesson just by rewinding the mistake, even if the main character says that he would learn narratively. At the very least, while I played this game, I did not think very hard about modifications to my approach while rewinding. Thus, I did not really learn from my mistake after rewinding time. This contradiction can also be applied to the atomic bomb interpretation. Sure, it may be easy to say that one would simply have learned after making the mistake of killing so many people, yet the creator believes that if one could simply take back their mistakes, then the lesson would not really be learned, just like in his mechanics. To carry this point home, in subsequent worlds, rewinding time is much less forgiving. Like in World 3, if the player messes up their execution, they must go back in order to set up the puzzle again. The way this care is bestowed into the puzzles is that some objects are not influenced by the manipulation of time. With more care, the player could spend more time dwelling on their actions. But, in the narrative, the main character even needed time to be non-manipulable in order to make progress. The main character needed to be out of the influence of forgiveness. The mechanics and the narrative mixed together to create this contradiction of meaning. The narrative did not want to reflect, and wanted to be outside of the realm of forgiveness. However, mechanically, one needs to spend time and look back on the past so that they could think about their present actions to improve their future. This is just like with the bomb, where the makers did not think of the consequences before their actions. They were outside of the influence of forgiveness and only thought of what they thought was progress. But if one goes on without thinking of consequence, then they will hold regrets later. Plus, later in the game, more features are added. With extra manipulation, more lessons arise. In World 5, the narrative speaks of holding on to a past self. To pair with this, the new mechanic introduced in this world is that the player has a past self to manipulate. Rewinding time will create a clone which will then carry out the task you performed before rewinding time. Thus, to solve the puzzles, you must use your past self, yet you must also deviate from what you have done before to make progress. Once again, a conflict arises. The books speak of wanting to hold on to what once was, while the mechanics speak of growing beyond your past self. This contradiction demonstrates the thoughts of wanting to make the bomb, to do not what is expected and to change oneself in order to make more creations. Yet, for one puzzle, you must kill your previous self in order to solve it. This could speak to how a decision such as to make such a weapon, you lose your past self. Once you grow, you cannot get your past self back, so one needs to take care of their decisions. One cannot act as their past self to make progress, but at the same time, not all progress is good due to the messages in the previous chapters. So we have all of these puzzles to solve, but at the same time, what if the player chooses not to do them? The creator takes the time to expand as much time as possible on this game, but the player could choose to just skip the dialogue, not solve the puzzles, and rush through to reach the end of the game. The creator could have made all of his content mandatory, yet he didn't. The player still has a choice to do the bare minimum, which is almost nothing, in his game. However, the player would then miss on the hidden meaning and lessons the maker intended for the player to learn. The player obtains next to nothing by rushing through the game. In order to get the meaning of the game, the player must stop to read the text and also take the time to solve the puzzles. They only learn if they choose to interact with both portions of the game. Just like with the puzzle mechanics and the narrative, if the player does not take care in their actions and spend time on this game, then they will not learn from it. At the same time, in order to fully complete the game and get every bonus item, some tasks are absolutely outrageous. For one of the bonus stars, in World 2, the player must wait hours for a cloud to fully cross the screen. Now this can be seen in many lights. In one way, in order to even notice the cloud in the first place, the player had to take loads of time to even notice the moving cloud. Thus, this achievement was only possible by slowing down to the extreme. And another way, the only way this was discovered was through a group collaboration to find all of these hidden bonuses the creator offered, thus demonstrating the group effort and desire to achieve, just like with the bomb. But still, what does one gain after this absurd amount of time? Nothing. The author leaves no lesson, just a little marker on a screen. So why add this to his game? I believe it is to emphasize the meaning of time. Just like in how the player gains nothing from skipping through the game, if the player chooses to focus on just one aspect of the game, such as getting all the achievements, then they too will miss the meaning of the game. The player could throw away their time in this pursuit instead of using it for reflection on the meaning behind the game's core mechanics and narrative. There's a balance in how to spread one's time, and the correct way to go about it is to actually learn from your mistakes. So Jonathan Blow demands your time, not only on your first playthrough through its puzzles and story, but at the end the player learns of a new metaphor to use to read the game, the atomic bomb. The whole rewinding mechanic at the climax hints towards another playthrough for a new perspective. But the creator also punishes the player for spending too much time on the game, by making the collection of bonus stars long and tedious, thus teaching the value of the time one has. So how much can one gain through spending so much time on this game? How many playthroughs would it take to completely understand all the hidden messages buried within? Plus, with all these different interpretations I have shown, one can still reach a different conclusion from the one I made. So what is one to do? Once again, perspective changes a lot, and just as time provides this difference, personal experiences also change perspective. Different interpretations arise from different players, thus no matter how many playthroughs one takes, they will never get a full understanding of the game. At least, you can choose how much to take away from this game, and I for one think I have gained plenty.